President Ronald Quay, President of the Royal Selangor Club, and Vice President Ms. Julie Ho, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I can't help but feel that as though I've come for a campaign of sort. The way President Ronald was saying things just now, I feel that I'm in it again. Anyway, thank you very much for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to address this very important and topical subject that is likely to affect the future of all of us. The subject is vast and complex, and many unknowns and sensitive issues. It is impossible to give an in-depth view within the half an hour I intend to speak. The intention is to enter into a dialogue on the subject as seen from my perspective, that is the political economy. Therefore, I will introduce the subject and my own observations and concerns to start with. I have also written an extended version of what I would like to bring to your attention. This is available in a printed form bearing the same title. I also made available the talk I had given at the Perak Academy on 2nd of October 2009, which also concerns the political economy of our nation. I would like to refer you particularly to the 10 points I have made at the end of that speech. For this afternoon, I would like to make the following observations. The impact of what is happening to the economies of America and Europe will be a continuous one for a period, and it will be unfolding in various forms which we cannot predetermine. There will be many unknowns and unpredictable consequences. It has been suggested by some political and economic observers that the crisis is likely to be the worst since the 30s, and it is bound to affect every economy in the world. I do not believe we will be exempt from the consequences, as in this day and age, no country is an economic island or indeed a political island. In trying to understand what is likely to happen to the Malaysian economy and its political consequences, it is important to understand the character of our economy and its similarities with American and European capitalism, and also the dissimilarities. American and European capitalism, which is now accepted as a failure in some very important areas of the economy, has had a long history with very strong political and cultural underpinnings, particularly in the rule of law, as well as freedom of expression and thought. Malaysia's version of capitalism, unfortunately, does not have a long history of political and cultural foundation that America and Europe have. The significance of this difference will have an impact on the outcome and cannot be underestimated. It is something that we must try to imagine. From the time of independence, many of us have thought of changing the colonial economy into an economy that suits our history and our objective, which is a balanced and just economy. The attempts that were made to change the economy are still an unwritten history in our political economy. Be that as it may, it is my contention that the changes that took place in the 80s were profound, pervasive, and influenced the value system in public life today, which we will have a very strong contributive factor in dealing with the crisis when it comes. What happened from the 80s onwards was an imposition of a new form of capitalism, similar to the changes of capitalism in America and Europe. These changes were not widely debated in Malaysia, neither was it resisted, because of the nature of the political power that came to exist in tandem with these economic changes. It is my contention that the changes that took place in the 80s were profound, pervasive, and influenced the value systems in public life. It has also brought about structural changes in our society. These structural changes, I don't mean formal constitutional changes only, relate to the way that constitutional issues are being interpreted today. They relate to the way in which political parties have been transformed and the manner in which politics is being conducted today, both within and outside the political parties themselves. It has also brought about changes to the administration of the state apparatus, both unto itself and its relations with the public. Equally important is what I call public values. In other words, values associated with the public responsibility that goes along with the position that one assumes. The sum total of the transformation and its influence will have serious consequence on the future of our country, as those changes are still with us in public life, particularly the politics of the day. Before I explain the nature of the changes and the consequence, I would like to state briefly the political culture, understanding, and values that prevailed prior to the transformation, just in order to emphasize the contrasts. At the time of independence, the problems of the country were those that we inherited from our colonial past. The most striking aspect of it was the fragmented nature of our society in almost every aspect of public life, particularly in politics and the economy. Race dominated the general view of both politics and the economy. There was also extensive poverty, both in the rural and urban areas. But the rural and the urban distinction had another aspect to it, and the rural economy was at subsistence level, unlike the urban areas. It had also a racial distinction. But the distinctions of poverty levels carried also a racial distinction. In the urban areas, the middle class also had racial characteristics. Capitalism, as practiced in the colonial period, was clearly unsustainable to maintain a cohesive and united community within Malaysia. The distinguishing feature of this policy is privatization of public ownership of utilities and functions of government essential for public good, such as water, public transport, health, and other services, to selective business associates. These were privatized without regard to the important role they played in society to give it cohesion and shared values. It was an ideological shift. The consequences on the public and the governance of society generally followed, particularly its impact on public finance. The most alarming factor of this policy was the lack of transparency that was legally enforced by amending the Official Secrets Act. In my view, these policies and the policies that followed for the purpose of implementing the economic policy have generally weakened our economy as it had existed. One of the great weaknesses that was introduced into our political economy and the economy was the rush to accumulate wealth and the spread of greed. This changed the nature of public responsibility, particularly the manner in which public revenue was managed. Another consequence of this new policy was the rise of a new political force, a united front of incumbent political power and selective business interests. This has become a powerful political force, invisible to the public eye and not held accountable. It nurtured a vested interest which is interested in maintaining the status quo at all costs. It has corrupted political life. It can also be reasonably stated, until proven otherwise, that public expenditure and private gain had merged in some respects, and the level of care and respect for public finance has declined. This new political economy became less focused and sensitive to the real socio-economic problems of the people. The growth that resulted from this had, in many respects, not dealt with the rising demand for equality of employment, giving a sense of self-worth. Self-worth particularly to the large number of young graduates, some of whom became absorbed into the emerging public service. This gave a false impression of the economy. It is now generally accepted by those who understand economics that statistical evidence and economic reality are not the same. Nevertheless, the reliance on statistical evidence can lead us to make believe that all is well when it is not. I say this because the empirical evidence that is evident seems to suggest that over time the focus of growth was on accumulation of wealth rather than the realities of the socio-economic problems that the people face. One example of this is the changes in the character of labor in Malaysia. The demand for labor has been seen as an opportunity to create a rentier political class from those who are part of the political apparatus. It has reached such proportions that there is an alarm that the employment opportunities have all been taken up by foreign labor. The effect of the policies of making labor a commodity available to employers has many consequences, one of which is to squeeze out our citizens from gainful employment and the lower end of the economy, such as hawking, etc., as a means of living. But that as it may, this can be a turning point for our nation in a positive sense if we recognize the nature of our problems. One of the major problems that would be in the way of meeting the consequence of the crisis will be the education and standards of skill of our people. As a means of an economic recovery, we will require a fundamental change in the education system we provide for our citizens. We need an education system that produces quality and skills. I would say that under the present system, it will be difficult for us to achieve that. We need the moral courage to reform the entire education system that we have today. I would also add, we need a massive adult education program to ensure that the present generation is not left behind. The objective of the adult education should be to provide the necessary language and technical skills and to involve as large a section of the population in non-formal educational programs which will bring national cohesion and at the same time rejuvenate dormant areas of our economy, such as the agricultural sector. We have enough land. What we need is for those who are prepared to go into these areas of our economy to be equipped with the technical knowledge that is necessary to bring about a green revolution in our country. The reality today is that we have had a continuous deficit of the budget. Household debt standing at 75%, and 40% of that household debt is beyond the 100% earning. Inequality of income has widened as never before. There is also a suggestion that the inequality in Malaysia is wider than that of Thailand or even Indonesia. At this point, I would like to highlight some of the salient points of the Greek crisis, not to alarm, but to understand. They are, and one, it had a bloated public sector, a network of oligarch families who controlled large parts of the Greek economy and financial sector. And for the oligarchs, took every opportunity to take out money from Greece. 5, the media, because of the control, was not able to expose these facts to the public. 6, the system was corrupt and it continued to overprice public contracts until the system collapsed. As the ripples and waves of the crisis in America and Europe reach us, all these factors I have mentioned are likely to coalesce and produce a turbulence in politics and the economy. No democratic system, I repeat, no democratic system, no institution as envisaged by our Constitution can survive a political economy of this nature. There is too much money in politics and it has become inseparable from power and the electoral process. The corrupting influence of money in public life is obvious for any need for explanation. While the economic and social problems accumulate, a divide has been created by those who benefit from the dysfunctional system and those who suffer from it. It is no different from the experience of many countries in the Middle East. Many who had enjoyed the benefits from incumbent power sustained the system and were reluctant to give up power or change. The lesson we have to learn from the Arab Spring is that a dysfunctional democracy, however well dressed up by public relations exercises or by the media, cannot withstand the realities that are the natural consequence of abuse of power and wanton accumulation of wealth. That is the most important message, I think, that the Arab Spring has conveyed, and we must take cognizance of it. For business to play a responsible and major role in creating a viable economy, it must be freed from politics. The economy of business must be returned to the people in order for them to develop. It must be given the freedom to function without having to depend on political patronage. The right to do business as part of the national economy must be a fundamental right, not subject to favors by politicians or bureaucrats. My intention in all that I have said is for the purpose of reflection and for us to grasp some realities that are urgent and to think whether an economic system where money played such a dominant role in the functioning of the state and the constitutional system of democracy can survive. The task of understanding the reality and dangers of a dysfunctional system based on money in the political process is urgent. There is a role for all of us because the country belongs to us, and we have a duty to save Malaysia from the trials, tribulations and agony that we see is happening as a result of the failure of Western capitalism. I've given you an overview of a possibility of what can happen if we don't take precautions. On a positive note, It is my view that we as a nation have the wherewithal to prevent the effect of the present international crisis affecting us adversely. The measures that we can take, of course, depend on leadership and political will. It is my view that after having experienced ministerial power and witnessed how good economics can take a turn from the original objectives, to suggest to you that whatever the economic policies we can construct, the success, however, will depend on the quality of political leadership. In many cases, it has become one of the most important determining factors. Thank you.